Welcome, welcome everyone. I'll be excited to see who is showing up today for the second in our series. And this one today is on brains. So, for all of those who forgot to watch, they're probably the ones that really needed to be watching. So, we'll keep watching. What I would like for you to do is go ahead and hop into the comments section and say hello to me. Tell me where you're coming from, where you're listening in from, and kind of what you want to hear today. There we go. We've got some coming in. We'll wait a little bit for everyone to get here. I know that weekends are precious time, self precious time, but hopefully you're going to be able to find this information useful for you in your health. There we go. Let's take a few more minutes. Let everybody, all the different platforms have to adjust and get to us. So that's why we have to take just a second to let everyone in. And I'm excited for today's show. There was actually new studies that were coming in this morning at my usual 4 or 5 a.m. time of checking new studies, and it pertained to what we're going to talk about today. So that'll be fun. All right. There's one. Hello, Summer. All right, let's go. Let's see. Mary from Atlanta. Hi, Dr. D, Pat, and Mary from Atlanta. Thanks for joining. I look forward to questions, and you guys are going to be able to put those into the comments, and I know Tarna is going to collect them, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of this, and I hope to be able to get to most of them. Hello there, David. Good to see you again. You made both of these, and now we'll see if you get to make all three in the series. That'll be great. Thanks for joining us. All right. Got more coming in here. This is great. And I think Tarna will let us know when all of our platforms are live and ready. And then we can get started for all this great information that I cannot wait to tell you about. Let's see. I think Tarna is still wanting us to wait just a little bit. Oh, there she comes. Let's see what she has to say. Hi, Tarna.
Hello. Everything is out and everyone is notified. So folks will be joining by the second. And I am going to go ahead and share a little bit about who we have with us today. And we will get this party started. And as Dr. Worden said, this is the second part of her 3-part series. And who is Dr. Worden? Why is it somebody that we would listen to guide us on this journey? So to guide us on this journey today is award-winning physician, researcher, and global health educator who has spent her career bridging the worlds of conventional and alternative medicine. She collaborates with major institutions and researchers across the globe and has received many awards and accolades from her peers. This recognition includes the Hope Award for her significant contribution to the education of behavioral health, and just recently she delivered a 5-hour presentation to physicians at Torrance Medical Center, a Cedars-Sinai affiliated behavioral health hospital in California. She is part of a globally known and well-respected Dr. Joe Dispenza's research team and is just returning from Dr. Daniel Amen's The End of Mental Illness event. This puts her in a unique position to share and bring to us some cutting-edge information, and is somebody that has done a lot in the area of not only mental health and relationships, but brain health and how that all ties together. So please help me welcome back to the screen Dr. Worden, and she is going to share with us throughout the next hour and answer any questions that you guys may have to the best of her abilities. So as things come up today, please just pop them into the chat. We will be watching those comments and we will go through as many questions as we have. With that, Dr. Worden, the show is yours.
Thank you, Tarna. And welcome, everyone. Let's rate ourselves. First thing, think about your brain right now. Scale of 1 to 10. How is your memory? In the last few days, how has your memory been? Think about it on a scale of 1 to 10. Next one, how is your cognition? Are you wiring and firing? You're being able to connect the dots. How's that going? How about your clarity? You're clear in what you want to do and what you're thinking. Things are looking like looking through a glass, and it's very clear what you want to see and what you want to say. How are you on focus? Do you feel unfocused? Do you feel scattered? You can't reel it in and go into something that you really want to learn about or to do because you're not focused. Scale of 1 to 10. Good. Look at all these. Oh, I see some nines and tens. This is great. This is great. I see an 8, but that's all right. So, how about let's go into the mental, emotional of how you're feeling. You don't have to put this, whether you're depressed or anxious or you feel overwhelmed, any of that. Emotionally, how are you feeling? Scale of 1 to 10. Scale of 1 to 10. How are you? Because now you may ask yourself, are they different? Is my emotional state different than how my brain is functioning? Well, not really. They are ultimately tied. And as Tarna said in the introduction, is that I just came back from it was a charity event for ending mental illness held by Dr. Daniel Amen, who is well respected in the field of brain health. And he is always saying that heal the brain and you're going to heal mental illness. And I do believe that. I have seen that. And I am an affiliate of Dr. Amen's. I studied SPECT scans and all the different types of testing that he does. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. But I do want you to know that if you're emotionally not doing well, it can have to do with your gut health, your immune system, all the other things that we've been approaching in this 3-part series. But a lot of the time, you heal the brain, you heal mental illness. So let's get started. And I want you to know that I've been talking about the brain gut axis for 30 years. I remember lecturing for a group of psychiatrists and psychologists at a university, and it was 30 years ago. And I asked them, where do you think in the body that serotonin is made? Where in the body do you think serotonin is made? And they were going hypothalamus, pituitary. They're trying to think of the brain structures. And at that time, they were not aware, and many are starting to understand now, but that the majority of your brain chemistry and that serotonin, I'm happy, okay hormone, is made in your gut. So the brain gut connection is real. Next week, on the next section, we'll be talking more about gut health. But I want you to know that it's not a new topic to me. We know what it does with the immune system and many others. And if you think about where are we as far as a United States or America? Those of you outside of the United States, your stats are looking a little bit close to ours anyway. But we will say that 1 in 9 adults right now in America, 1 in 9 adults over 65 years old may be heading or have dementia. And the most common form of dementia is Alzheimer's. These are not good statistics. But the good news is, and this just came out literally this morning before I jumped on this live event, is that from 2000 to 2016, the rate of dementia has decreased 3.7%. Now, it's interesting. There was always a difference between male and female. Women had more dementia than men. Now they're starting to connect some dots. And what we are seeing, a big research signal that means it's big enough for us to say, this might be true, is that there's a level of education piece here. Those with the highest level of education have the lowest rates of dementia. And in general, older generations, women didn't have as much of a higher education. So that might be part of the reason why women were experiencing it. And that gap is starting to close, maybe because of the educational piece. But I want to give you a few other causes that you may not have thought of. If your brain is not wiring and firing, if you're not emotionally okay, we're going to be talking about spiritual in a little bit, about not religion, but about you feeling connected to something outside of yourself. We'll go there, but right from the emotional standpoint. But right now, on the brain piece, one of the biggest things that we know is that inflammation is the root of many diseases: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis. We can keep going on and on. Inflammation is now highly related to brain disease as well, and with aging. In fact, it's called inflammaging. So inflammatory aging, and that affects everything, but the brain is specifically linked to it, and especially memory decline. If we have inflammation going on in the brain, your memory starts to suffer. It's like your brain being on fire. It cannot work properly if that's going on. And some of the risks, I know that you should know by now that many of the things that we talk about with every disease state, from cancer to just an ache and a pain, is are the same risk factors, and that includes smoking is one of the biggest ones, especially with brain health. Smoking, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, excess alcohol, depression itself. Being depressed is not good and puts you more at risk for dementia. We talked about less educated, traumatic brain injuries, and those could be old ones from childhood. You fell out of the tree or you played football without your helmet on, or even with the helmet on. Obesity, air pollution. Air pollution is one of the biggest environmental factors that we have going on right now that we know is affecting our health, and now we know it's affecting our brain. Insufficient sleep, watching TV too long, and frequenting bars. They actually did a study. Those who went to the bars more often had a higher risk of dementia. And remember, the most common form is Alzheimer's, and also processed food. Talk more about some of these in a minute, but some other ones that I think are very interesting for you to ask yourself as you're listening to this. Another risk is social connection, or should I say, lack of. So, the lack of a social connection damages many health systems as much, but when it comes to the brain, and listen to this is interesting, damages the brain or your overall health as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So, what if you're smoking and you don't have a social connection? It's a double whammy here. But 15 cigarettes, none of many of you would say, no way, I would never do that. But you may not be doing anything to try to get out and bolster your relationships. Another one is the processed meat that I talked about. It increases your risk of dementia by 44% and Alzheimer's by 52%. This was a well done study. So you ask, what are processed meats? It's the salamis and the hams, the things that come in the packages. But I think in time, we may be able to take the research signal and see, is it because of the nitrates in it? So be on the safe side, buy nitrate free of your favorite processed meats, but in the meantime, eat less of that all of the time. Another uh, risk factor is a leaky brain barrier. Now, you've heard of leaky gut by now. Those of you following me and are educated in health understand leaky gut, but we have a leaky brain as well. And it's these toxic fat proteins that kind of interfere with these tiny little blood vessels that we have going on in our brain, also our kidneys. I think they're ultimately involved. But these tiny blood vessels, when those proteins start aggravating those blood vessels, it causes inflammation. And what does inflammation in the brain cause? A loss of neurons. That means you're killing brain cells. Leaky leaky brain barrier. All of these risk factors we're talking about are causes of leaky brain barrier. Here's another one: obesity in midlife. So the more obese you were from the middle of your life puts you more at risk in later life. And yo-yo dieting causes more poor mental outcomes. And it's interesting that you're better off staying 5 or 10 pounds overweight, even though we don't want that. If we stay 5 or 10 pounds overweight over a general amount of time and we have a stable weight, we have less of a chance of that brain atrophying and causing problems. It's a slower decline. But if you are yo-yo dieting and you're doing that, oh, I'll gain my pounds over the holidays and then I'm going to go back and lose it again. If you're doing that up and down and up and down, that weight fluctuation contributes as much as 60% to the decline in your brain function. Periodontal disease. Take care of your teeth. we are seeing a heavy signal, a large signal between Alzheimer's and periodontal disease. So take care of your gums and your teeth. DNA oxidation is another one that causes mutations in the DNA that damages the brain. What do we do about that? More antioxidants, more vegetables, maybe a few more fruits if you do not have a blood sugar issue or you're not going into a strict keto that only allows a few berries, but we need more antioxidants that can be helpful. Another one is a poor diversity in your microbiome. That's the bugs that live in and on us, all of us. But the ones in the gut, specifically in that microbiome in the gut, the less diverse, the less bugs you have, the more risk you have of having brain problems as you age, especially. So we want to make sure that we are making diversity or putting good probiotics in good foods, that sauerkraut and all the fermented foods that will help us with that. And the strain that seems to be the lowest that's associated with higher risk is Bacteroides, for those of you who want to get into science here with me. And another thing is that we can look for that microbiome. We can look and see what it looks like. There is testing for it. And we can also look for neuroinflammation in the same kinds of tests. There's ways to actually test to see how much inflammation do we have going on in the brain. Here's another one, hearing loss. I did a newsletter not too long ago about that. And some studies are showing that it can double your risk. So if you're straining to hear, the brain is having to work harder. That's one of the hypotheses of why this might happening. But we know that 8% of all diagnosed dementia patients right now wear hearing aids. So what came first? It looks like if you have hearing issues, you need to be wearing a hearing aid. Don't worry about how it looks. Don't worry about have they gotten better? Yes, they have. The sooner you get those on, the better it may help you in not taxing or tiring that brain. This is somewhat controversial. There are groups that are saying, no, heal the brain and the hearing will get better. I haven't seen a strong research signal yet for that, but it may be true. In the meantime, knowing that if you're having a struggle in hearing, it's probably affecting your brain health. Another one is that disturbed sleep patterns actually show up years or decades before Alzheimer's. It's one of the things that we ask our patients, how are you sleeping? And if they're not sleeping well, we have in the back of our mind that we may be heading towards brain pathology or brain problem if we don't do something about that. And we may need to be doing something about the brain itself, because that in itself could be contributing to why you're not sleeping very well. Respiratory illness, including COVID. We know now there are neurological and psychiatric after effects from viruses, not just COVID, but all viruses. So that's about the immune system. That's about learning and taking care of your immune system and making sure when we are exposed to and contract a virus that our systems can handle it. So therefore, our brain may not take as much of an inflammatory hit and have these neurological and psychiatric illnesses that we're seeing. Cardiovascular disease. Now, what should your heart rate be? A resting heart rate should be between 60 and 69 beats per minute. If yours is faster than that at a resting rate, it's just going too fast all the time. That increases your risk of dementia by 28%. So we need to figure out what's going on. Why is your heart rate so high? Is it because you don't have relationships and support in your life? Because you don't feel connected to something outside of yourself? Is it an inflammatory condition? Do you have a cardiovascular reason? I could go on and on. Is it gut related? You need to find the reason why that heart rate is high and start fixing it. Another one that I think that I'll lastly mention as far as risk factors is one that I believe is far underutilized and underrepresented is liver health. Liver cirrhosis, we know, is associated with impaired memory. And intellectual functioning. So sometimes you may need to look at your liver, and that could be with a FibroScan, it could be with other kinds of imaging, but seeing, do we have a liver issue that is contributing to your brain function, not doing everything that we want it to do? So let's talk a minute about how do you diagnose it? How do you know? Well, first of all, most of you know right now, if you're not all the questions that I asked you at the beginning, if you're not clear, if you're not focused, if you don't feel engaged, if you don't have your memory, you know if things are starting to slow down. And that doesn't mean you have dementia, doesn't mean you're going to have dementia, severe dementia or Alzheimer's. It means your brain is giving you a signal that you need to not ignore. Diagnosis, we can see some things like brain shrinkage or some inflammation with a PET scan, CAT scans, and some types of MRIs. The SPECT scan that Dr. Daniel Lehman does in his clinics, and that I'm an affiliate for, shows us kind of the functioning of the brain. Is it hyper or hypo functioning? Is it too slow in areas or too fast in others? And that gives us hints about what could be going on as well. There is another new test that just is new. It's not in the United States yet, but it is in Europe, but it's coming soon. It's called NF1, and that is a blood test, and it's very accurate. And all it's telling us is there a brain disease going on? It doesn't tell me which disease. Is it Parkinson's? Is it ML? Is it MS? Is it just Alzheimer? What is it? It doesn't tell me what, but it tells us we definitely have some pathology going on in the brain. That's coming soon, and that would be nice to have. I think it's going to be more information for us to be able to see. Now, let's talk about the good news. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. I'm going to say that again. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. It should not be. There's something wrong. We need to find out what it is. Some of the basic things that you can start right now thinking about: physical activity. You have better cognition regardless of any brain pathology. You could have something going on, a disease process going on, but your cognition will be better if you are moving and you are exercising. Also, mental stimulation. We know that the brain doesn't really kind of start slowing down until 60. Again, I would question that in saying, is it because it's 60 or 65, people just start saying, oh, it's about time to retire. I think I'll just, and you just go do things where you're not stimulating your brain. So, mental stimulation, things that have shown up in the studies to help, is learning a new language, not a language you've studied before, a new one, or a new musical instrument. So, if you played violin before, switch to piano. Those are two things that will keep your brain active and healthy and keep it stimulated. As far as diet, anything that's inflammatory, not good. Do I need to say again, no sugar, less carbs? But the mind diet, there's a new diet for everything now, right? And there's one called the mind diet. It looks similar to the Mediterranean diet. It's green leafy vegetables, legumes, fish, nuts. I would say raw nuts. And once they're cooked, you've made some bad oils, so make sure they're raw nuts. And they also are a proponent in the mind diet of whole grains. I don't know about that. Some of you might be all right with that. Others, I would say, keep that at a limited basis. But again, it's similar to the Mediterranean diet. And I talked in the first module about the Mediterranean diet, the green Mediterranean diet, which is adding in some green tea. And green tea has been beneficial for as an anti-inflammatory and also for brain health. Ketogenic diet. I cannot say enough. If you do have, you or someone you know or your loved ones have Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's, any of these brain diseases that are devastating, I utilize the ketogenic in my practice. And I will tell you that the patients will tell you themselves if they have a little treat here and there and they jump, they get out of ketosis, they immediately feel it. They know they're not thinking, they're having trouble speaking. If it's Parkinson's, the tremors get worse. Many brain pathologies are showing in the studies, and in my clinical practice, I see it. It gets better when you're on a ketogenic diet. Now, you must do it right. It's high fat, it's not high protein, and you must do it right and make sure you're getting the right macro and micronutrients so that we're not depleted in some things that we need. Other things that have been shown to help your brain: breath work, meditation, music, walking in nature. Do those sound familiar? Anything that we're talking about, we keep coming back to those. They actually help memory, they help your brain be healthy. All of those little pieces will help you. I will come back to questions in a little bit. I know Tarna is looking through those, but I want to start with our next section. Rate yourself. Let's talk about relationships. Scale of 1 to 10. Do you feel socially isolated? Are you at a 0, a 1, or a 2? And remember, smoking 15 cigarettes a day equals that social isolation. Rate it. Do you have a strong support system? Do you have people around you? It could be people at work, it could be friends, it could be family, uh, even the ones that drive you crazy sometimes, right? But no pun intended. But that strong support system, that you have a community around you. Rate yourself there in your mind. You don't have to put it in the chat, but rate it in your mind. Are you at a 8, 9, or 10? Do you feel supported? Okay. The next one is, how would you rate yourself in your intimacy? And intimacy doesn't mean sex, but we're going to talk about sex as well because it's important for us as human beings. We need intimacy and sexual connection with others. Intimacy is that bond between two people that can happen in an intimate exchange. How are you doing on that right now? Are you taking time for it? Do you even have someone in your life to have that kind of relationship with? So don't give up if you don't, because they're out there. Plenty of people looking for supportive, wonderful, intimate relationships. Now let's talk about sex for a minute. Sex is important, and it's a very topic that a lot of doctors don't ask you about, but it's been on my intake for, what's it been, 28, 30 years. All right. I want to know, is it more or less than a year ago? Is it happening at all? If not, why not? Is your libido gone? Is your partner's libido gone? What is it? Just don't have the desire, too tired? Or is it painful? Is there a physical problem? Is there a problem with the male, that we've got a cardiovascular issue or a prostate issue that prohibits things from functioning? It all can be worked around so that you can have a beautiful, intimate sexual relationship. All the parts don't have to be functioning, but many times we can fix them. And many women will explain to me. I had one just recently, a patient. She was cute. She came in, I think she was in her 70s, late 70s, and she said, "Oh, I haven't had sex in years, and I don't really care about it." And I said, "What if?" Because she was divorced. And I said, "What if you found a partner? What if you found someone?" Well, I don't know. And I said, but if you're not taking care of the physical part of your body, called the vagina in a woman, if that's not being taken care of, it literally will become atrophied, dry, and will literally close together. And many 80 and even 90-year-olds I have helped get that organ, that system back into working order because they found the love of their life and that they wanted to be sexually active. I would encourage you, don't let that happen. Even if you don't have someone right now, you can do exercises and do things that will help your sexual organs be more healthy because it's a part of you being a human being and the relationships that are supported. Last piece, but not last, and not the least, is your spiritual connection. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And here's the question I want you to ask yourself. If you something was happening in your life that was not a good thing, and you needed to be able to tap into something, a meditation, a prayer, a breath work, do you have something that could get you to a level of peace, a 9 or 10 level of peace? A level of peace, right? Do you have a practice? That's what I'm asking. Have you worked on yourself enough? Have you allowed yourself to experience different types of meditations and prayers and breath work to be able to get into a parasympathetic state and connect with this amazing system outside of yourself? Call it God, Buddha, nature, energy. That's not for me to judge what you call that. I say God. I need you to have a sense of connection with something greater than yourself. That's your question. And if you don't, I would hope that you would start to explore that. There are many different types of meditations and breath works, and I'll be doing more education in the future so we can explore some of that together. That would be fun to do, and I think many of you would enjoy it and like it. So let's get ready for some of our Q&A questions. But before we do, I would encourage you Don't ignore the symptoms. Common doesn't mean normal. Just because a lot of people around you don't have relationships, they feel lonely, they're depressed, they're anxious, they don't have a connection to anything outside of themselves, and their brain's not working well. It just don't let yourself get away with the, well, everybody else around me is kind of like that too. I guess it's a part of aging. I'm going to say no, no, and no. If you want a long and healthy life that is full of passion and purpose, you must take care of yourself in all the areas that we've been talking about. And you can do it. And you can do it. It's all achievable. And it can all be a beautiful experience. And it will prove to you the power of the vital force, which is part of the tenet of the type of doctor that I am, working in integrative medicine. But the vital force of the human spirit is amazing when it's given what it needs. So I'm going to leave it there. And I think that we will be ready for some questions. All right. So I think Tarna has, yeah, I'll start looking here.
Awesome. All right, you guys. So Dr. Worden is truly here to take some of your questions. So please do pop those into the chat wherever you may be watching. I see plenty of you on today, but today so far, Dr. Worden, the group has been really quiet. Now, Mindy had asked, she says, what if I don't have friends or a partner, but I'm perfectly a happy, healthy hermit? What number would that be? And then she goes on to say, she does meditate. She keeps a dream journal as well as does regular creative practices. So she's definitely still connecting.
Yes.
But what
yes.
would you share with her to have for the for not having the partner or the family support system as she calls it?
So Mindy, I would ask you, could it be possible that if you did have people outside of yourself, that it could even bring your 10 to a 10.5? That would be the first question, right? There are a lot of people that I do know that are perfectly happy being with themselves. But I will say this. I want you to challenge yourself at a deep, deep level. Is that truly true, or is it a protective mechanism? And it may not be. You may be one of the ones that say, I like myself so well and I'm so connected to the divine, or whatever it is that your creative processes are, that you're super, super happy. But the stats show us that people in a committed relationship live longer for the most part. Remember, you're an N value, what we call the number of one. It's not that you have to fit in the mold of everyone else. So I want you just to think about what's holding you back, or is something maybe holding you back from getting out there and finding a group. And maybe it's here. We're going to, in the near future, Tarna's going to set it up where we have Facebook groups for those of you who are listening in on this and are interested, that you could start chatting about something I said in one of these. And maybe it has nothing to do with supportive relationships, but it allows you to feel like you have a community around you that's like-minded. So if you're happy, you're at a 10, great, but challenge yourself just a little bit. Could it be a 10.5? And is it truly a 10? But I'm glad to hear that you're doing all the things that you're doing.
Awesome. All right. Before we to go on to Vicki and Mindy here again, I wanted to remind you guys that this is the second part of Dr. Worden's 3-part series. She's going to be back this Wednesday. We're going to put in the chat right now for you guys throughout all of the platforms we're live on now, the information for you to sign up for the next event, just for the reminders. That is going to be on bringing it all together with gut health. And a couple days ago, we talked about sleep, your body, energy. Today, we're talking about your brain and your mental health, as well as your spiritual and your relationships. Again, on Wednesday, though, Dr. Worden's going to bring it all together and share a lot of fascinating things and what you want to be mindful of and aware of when it comes to your gut. So keep coming with us, or keep coming back, of course, but please let us know your questions today, even if it is still a follow-up question from the session before. And if you're seeing this as a replay, you're still welcome to put the questions in, and Dr. Worden and her team will continue to bring that information out to you guys. Elaine says, you are still as beautiful as ever, Miss Dr. Worden.
Oh,
and
Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
Mindy, now going back to what Mindy was asking, she says, "I love being alone though, because my relationships I've always felt frustrated and held back." And I think that's so common.
Good.
And Mindy,
Yes.
we
So,
appreciate you
yes, thank
available to
you.
be vulnerable today.
Right, that's exactly what I was going to say. I appreciate your vulnerability there, Mindy. You've not found the right partners. You have not found the right relationships. When you do, it's like you have another arm. You have another system around you that supports you in your dream journaling and in your meditations. They meditate with you and around you. You could probably be happy, and it sounds like you're fairly happy being alone. But what it would be like if I said now all of a sudden you had three arms to write dream journals out of, it's just the right person and the right community around you brings you to a whole nother level of inspiration, things they say, things they are doing that you haven't even thought of. Laughter is a huge piece of a human being. It's a huge piece of us enjoying this ride that we're on, this thing called life. Laughter is fun. You can find funny movies and things to laugh at by yourself, but it's kind of fun to hear the person next to you laughing. You've been around children and they're laughing. Like go to Disneyland as an adult. It's not quite the same as going with children who are seeing it for the first time. So if you have a good relationship for the first time, all the colors are brighter. And this has been studied too. Our brains light up, and you hope, and it pretty much happens at the beginning of most relationships, right? And then it takes time for you to see if it was real or not. But if it's real, we literally, our smells are better, everything smells better, colors are better, our emotions, our neurochemistry, our brain chemistry that gets lit up when we think, ooh, I may have found somebody that I like being with. I may have found a partner. I may have found a community. It lights up your brain, creates different chemicals, neurochemistry, and you feel this immediate, I'm in love with the group, in love with the person, this and that. So, it's always an exchange. And I'm sorry you've had this lack of or the wrong people, but what is the fairy tale of kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince? Maybe you just haven't kissed enough frogs. I'm going to say open yourself up, maybe. Open yourself up for a community, a relationship, and if it's meant to be, it will be. But if you're closed off, if you're tucked in and you're not going to let anyone in, it can't happen. So be ready for the transformational or the magical things that can happen in your life when you open up the shell, open it up, open your heart up and say, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I've had relationships that have been terribly abusive or not supportive, but I'm going to open my heart up again and I'm ready to see what comes my way. And the meditations that you're doing, be intentional with those, what you're looking for specifically. What are you looking for? Know what you think you might want, and then meditate on that or pray on that. All right.
Dr. Worden, where would she start? And I know that, and this isn't just for Mindy. I know that there's many of us in that same thought of even, would you say online communities or things along those lines? And Vicki Benton, who actually happens to be my mom and gets to socially interact with me by coming on to these
Oh,
lives.
great. Hi, Vicki.
I know. It's like she's like, oh, let me get some of my daughter because she's coming out in a couple months.
That's
And that's
great.
what she said was, I miss
Yeah.
my social activities, Bible study, and walking. And I think there might be something here for Mindy and also Vicki is the online communities. And I think, Mom, I need to help you get an online Bible study going and help you set up the
That's right.
text. I know that would be a big thing for you. But what would you suggest there, Dr. Worden?
Well, what you're starting with, if you're not mobile and you can't get out or you're afraid to get out for whatever reasons, there are so many things happening online. If you're not on Facebook, there's Twitter, there's all these things, right? That you can just start looking around and say, oh, there's a group that does this, bird watching, or there's a group that keeps dream journals. I would suggest for Mindy, there's got to be some dream journal groups out there. Now, wouldn't that be fun? To share your dreams, to share your journaling. That would be a place that I think that you could start is in your community. And there may be your local, there are local community not just churches, but spiritual centers. There's community centers for all ages that you can just type in, Google it. There are centers around you with multiple classes, right? And then learning to meditate, which it sounds like you're already doing. For those that are listening, there's different types of meditation. You can start with just learning how to breathe, and I mentioned last time James Nestor's book Breathe. But I do like Dr. for busy minds, for people with active wiring and firing brains that are going. I have found that an active meditation where you're breathing and you're holding, you're breathing and you're holding, you're actively meditating to let you finally get your brain out of the way and your mind out of the way so you can get into that wonderful spot that we're talking about, that the active meditations are a great way to do. And Dr. Joe Dispenza has online for the beginning courses. And I will tell you that his advanced retreats, once you've done the beginning courses, people from all over the world, thousands of people, and everybody's in a beautiful, happy spot. Everybody is community for you. There are lots of communities out there. If you're talking about walking, there are walking groups for your mom there, Tarna, right? There are groups that and you can help her find that. You knew how to get on Google and the internet and find all this. And we may be able to help you too. Any of you listening that feel like you're struggling, you just don't know where to start, shoot me a message. We may have some links and some ideas for you to be able to get kind of tapped back into your community. Maybe you want to tap back into your family. Maybe you don't. If it's a destructive family and they're not supportive relationship, then sometimes we're better without those relationships. But there are other people. You are not the only one that is feeling some kind of isolation or feels like you don't know where to go. Do you know how many people there are in the exact same situation? So maybe we can help on that and help you. So tell us what you would think you would like to do, what kinds of groups, and I think we can help you as well.
Awesome, awesome. And Mindy and she told us this earlier too. She's on a lot of online groups, and her art practice is what makes her very happy. And she said, so glad to be living in the age of technology where she can interact with like-minded groups. And isn't it the best,
Right.
Mindy? You can go when you need to, you can go when you want to.
And leave when you need to. That's right. That's right. But the online communities, there is nothing that takes the place of a human touch and a human hug. There's none of this. It's the best that we can do. And I'm glad we have it. I'm here now sharing with you as much as I can to share with you, but there's nothing like being in front of that person, looking in their eyes and feeling an exchange. And it's beyond just a feeling. We know the science. That's another workshop I want to do, is the electrical body, the bioenergetic body, and how we change one another's fields in good and bad ways. That's why it's important to pick the good relationships, right? The minute you know it's bad, you got to see why is it bad? Can it be fixed? Let's fix it. Sometimes they're the strongest to get past those barriers. But if you cannot, that does affect you physically, emotionally, and mentally, and you need to get out. But I do believe interaction, human to human, person to person, is always going to be the best.
Well, and when we started off today's session, you talked a lot about what we're doing in terms of eating, our overall health, how it impacts our brain, and of course, how that, of course, translates into some of our relationships. So before we
Yes.
let Dr. Worden back to her day to day, do you guys have any questions on memory and your cognitive functions, or even some of the foods that Dr. Worden was talking about, or the eating practices she was talking about that can help contribute to the way that we are able to remember things, helping us stay away from Alzheimer's or dementia, or if we're already experiencing those things, what are some of the suggestions that she shared with us today that we can take away? I know one thing you said that I hadn't heard much of before. I've heard people say eat raw nuts, and I know this seems so simple, but then they turn into bad oils when we cook them. I hadn't heard that before. And what are some of those, I guess, pitfalls that are impacting our brain? And even when you said ketosis, it's not just high protein, it's the high fats and autoimmune. And I think that's something that a lot of us are dealing with more than what we may realize,
Right.
is inflammation in our brains
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is leading to
Right.
autoimmune or could be leading to.
So that leaky gut and leaky brain are really from inflammation destroying the lining, and you have to find the root of the problem. It can be heavy metal toxicities. It can be foods that you're eating, and we have ways of testing the food, like food sensitivities. It's called an IgG test. We have ways of looking for that. Can we see inflammation? First of all, you can just ask your traditional doc to run a high sensitivity CRP, cardioreactive protein. That lets me know, do you have inflammation going on in the body? Doesn't tell me where. It tells me there's a lot going on cardiovascular wise, but it's usually throughout the whole body. Our next step is to find where it is and what's causing it. So foods that we know that cause inflammation are sugar, and sugar, anything white bread, white flour. The white things cause inflammation. Also, a lot of red meat going down a prostaglandin 2 pathway, that can cause some inflammation, but if you eat a lot of it, but most people eating a couple times a week, a couple 2 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, if you're really active, you need that protein, and a good clean animal, and eating that red meat is great too. But fish is anti-inflammatory. Yes, it has metals, and we have to detox, and we talked about it last time, but rotating your foods is one of the main things that we can talk about to keep inflammation down. Until until you've done testing, until you understand, rotate your foods, different vitamins and minerals. And ketosis, being in ketosis, means high fat, good fats. That's avocados, coconut oil, raw nuts and seeds. It is not the bad oils. It's not canola and safflower oil and all of those. You have to understand and know what you're doing, right, with it. So when you do, and you know that you've got a good program that seems to be working for you, that's the best. How do you feel? How is your memory? How are you feeling? I see here, listen, Mindy, you mentioned sugar. I heard that dark chocolate's good. Wondering if you can tell me anything on this. If you're not allergic to cocoa, which I am, darn it, and I love chocolate. It's a +1. And if I'm doing well, not a lot of stress, eating really healthy, exercise, doing all the things I know to do, I can have chocolate. It's okay. But if I'm not, I have chocolate, my body talks to me, not in a good way. Okay. So chocolate in general is a good antioxidant. It's kind of like green tea, kind of like coffee. They are good if you do not have a problem with them. And you can get unsweetened chocolates. You can get like Lily's chocolate, is sweetened with stevia. You can make your own, which I like. Get the dark chocolate chips, the organic if you can. Get anything clean as you can. Make your own fat bombs. Those are recipes. Look them up. You can do lemon. You can do chocolate. You put them and you make them with monk fruit, which I believe at this point may be better than stevia as far as a non-nutritive sweetener. So those are great. And here's Summer. Don't think her memory's bad, but going into a room, getting distracted by a small chore. So I start on that and realized I forgot to do what I originally. So have you always been that way would be the question. She's asking, is it ADD? What is it? Why does she go into the room to do something? She sees something, she gets distracted and goes on. If you've been that way since childhood, maybe it's ADD, maybe it's ADHD, but here's the thing about those, I'm going to say pathologies. It's not a deficit. It's called attention deficit disorder. It's a hyper attention. It's not being able to take down, go down one path and stay there. It's not a deficit. And Dr. Howell is I think he's a psychologist. He talks to one of the groups that I belong to, and he's very good. And he's written a book. I think it's called ADD or ADHD. We'll try to find it and put it in the link if we can here. But he lectures, and I really agree with him on that. It can be a superpower. So Summer, when you learn to focus that brain that can go into multiple areas, if that's what it is, it can be a superpower, but you've got to learn how to handle it. You got to learn how to utilize it for your benefit instead of, oh, I forgot to do what I came here to do. So, and she's asking if there's a supplement to help with that. The first step is, as always, find out what's causing it. Once we know what it is and what's causing it, then nutrition, I always go with food first. And if there's a supplement that can help, that can benefit, then that's the way to go. But first step is, do you really have ADD, ADHD? And if you do, don't go, well, that's it. Okay, I guess I'm done. I'll never be able to focus or remember what I went into the room for. No, no, no. Yes, you can. Many people high level people, famous name people that we all know have been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, and they've learned how to utilize it as a superpower instead of a deficit. All right.
All right, that's Ed Holloway's book, ADHD, and then he just released the 2.0, and we put that there in the chat for you guys.
Perfect.
I love how you shared how it can be utilized as a superpower. And I know another person that you interact with, BJ Fogg, with tiny habits. Maybe that could be something even, what could be that tiny habit of before I go into the room to help me remember what those pieces are? Because
Right.
we all, I mean, a lot of us deal with
Yeah.
that same thing. We go in there and there's so much
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
to do.
So then you got to say, is it actually a brain pathology starting? Is dementia starting? Is there problem? Is there inflammation? Is there something going on in the brain? Or is it you just haven't created the right kind of habits? And you're right, Tarna. BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits, might be helpful for some people. I will tell you that one of the best ways I know to get the brain and the heart to entrain is with music. And again, I will put out there, everybody knows at this point, Barry Goldstein is my husband, but he is the master at that. You want to be able to focus and control, and to be able to learn how to connect your brain waves from being the crazy brain waves, incoherent, going different directions at different times, not connecting with your heart rate. It's that breath. It's keeping yourself in that parasympathetic good state so the brain can function properly. Any good foods or supplements recommended for osteoporosis? Well, that's off this topic, but yes, MK7. And if you watched last week, I think we went into the body section a little bit. I like the power plate, the vibration power plate. And I like MK7 with the right kinds of vitamin D and boron and things that will drive minerals into the bones. Just taking calcium and maybe some vitamin D may not be enough. You've got to make sure it's being driven inside the bones. So that's to work with an integrative specialist for you to learn about that. But the MK7 is a good product that I recommend, and I like it. I think it's called Osteomax or something like that. Osteomax MK7. You can find it on my website. You can go there and look. But the power plate or strength training. You have to do resistance training. You have to do bands or exercises that put weight and resistance on those bones if you want to build them back. Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, we are getting to the top of the hour. If there's any last questions, we can maybe stay for another one or two. Again, we're going to be back on Wednesday and talking about the gut. And then shortly after that, we will be putting the whole series together. And I know that Dr. Worden has gone through so many topics with us, and there's so many little pieces of the top of the topic for us to dig into even deeper and to ask her those questions. So we'll continue to be putting that information out for Dr. Worden and making it available to you guys in bite-sized chunks. Mindy says MK7, is that a supplement?
It is. It is a supplement. It's a type of vitamin K and if I can remember, it's on my site. If you just type in bone or osteoporosis, you'll see it. It'll pop up. You can find a supplement similar to that, or you could use that one. All I can say, if it's mine, I've done the testing for you to know its quality, and I have experience with it. Watched osteoporosis and pena go toward the better direction, if not completely out of it, by doing all the things that we're talking about for osteoporosis. It can be reversed, even though traditional wisdom would tell you that it can't. It can.
And I think that's something that I've learned from you over the years of listening to you and asking you questions myself is there's supplements, but then there's also what you need to do physically. And I think you say it over and over and over. It is the exercise. So if we don't have access to our power plate, we can still do the resistance training. And that's what I'm trying to remind myself of as well. And Marcia says, do you sell that product? Yeah, Marcia, we can get you the link for that in just 1 second. And she does have that on her website. And I think you're talking about the MK7, right?
I think it's called Osteoprime MK7. Or my team should be able to find that for you if you let. I know that Sierra should be able to get that or find that link. If you just go to my website and you just type into the search bone or type in osteoporosis, it'll pop up. But it's you'll find it. If not, ask us. We'll get back to you. We're not going to forget about you after this.
Osteomax is what you called
Okay,
it, Dr.
I can't see the comments, Tanya, so
No worries.
I can't tell, I can only see the starred ones, so, if I can see that, I'll make sure.
Oh,
Uh,
on the
I
top
can't
where
see comments,
okay,
yeah, I've only been able to see the starred ones you
just the
gave me, I
starred
haven't been
ones?
able to see the
Here, I'll star
comments.
that one for you.
There you go. That
Awesome.
way I'll be able to help. All right. But that's a good product, but you still want to do your resistance training. The analogy is you can bring the bricks and the glue, but if you don't have the workers to build the house, you only have part of it. You must do the resistance training alongside of giving the bones what they need, those nutrients, and making sure it's getting in there where it needs to go.
Yep.
Yeah, tell me.
Awesome. And I think this is a great question to bring us home today from Summer Ray. She says, for those of us that don't understand the significance of clean supplements, can you explain it to everyone and why yours are better? Thank you for that, Summer. We know that that's something. And then
I'm passionate.
Marcia says, please keep these videos going for us all. You got it,
Thank
Marcia.
you,
Thank
Marcia.
you.
I will. We've got another one in a few days that well, let me start with that. Why the clean supplements is that I've worked in the nutrition industry for a couple of decades, and I know how many bad players there are. And sometimes it's a good company and a good person, and then they sell it to the next one, and then they start getting the raw materials from somewhere else. And so my staff spends a lot of time, my team, they spend a lot of time making sure that for every bottle of anything that I'm saying that I have on my site, that we have a certificate of analysis. That means that company showed me on that bottle, not that they did it 2 years ago on something else, but that on that particular product, I know I have the certificate of analysis shows me they did the testing, that it's pure, it's clean, and that it has in there what it says it has in there, and it doesn't have molds and the heavy metals and all that. I would rather you take nothing than a poor quality supplement. That's what I want you to hear from me. Eat good food. And if you can't eat super healthy all the time, or if you've got something going on in the body where it needs extra help, these supplements can be very helpful if you get the right ones and they're quality and clean. If they're not, you're better off without it. You have the right to ask any company that you're buying anything from that you're doing on a consistent basis to ask them for a C of A, certificate of analysis. If they say they don't have it, they don't do it, you better move to the next company. It's not expensive for them to do it, and they should be doing it. All right. And I think that that is the end of this. And I'm excited though. Health does begin in the gut. Health begins in the gut. And that's our last of our 3-point series that's coming up. In fact, Tarna's going to tell you all the details in just a minute. But I want you to know, and I think many of you know, that if your gut is not working well, neither is your brain, neither is your immune system, your bones, like everything will suffer if you cannot break down and assimilate the nutrients that we eat to get them to the body to repair and to heal and to function. It cannot happen. So, gut is probably one of the most important things that we will talk about. And I have a long list of some great, wonderful things for you for the next one. And I'm excited for you to share that for me to share that with you.
Awesome.
Marnie, you want to tell
Awesome.
them a
Thank
little
you
bit
so
more about that one?
I sure am. Mindy says, thank you so much for answering all my questions and happy holidays to all of
Thank
you. Right
you.
back at you.
Yep.
And Barry Goldstein, Dr. Worden's wonderful husband, he says, thank you, Dr. Worden. Summer says, thank you, Dr. Worden. And Serenity Sounds Vibrational Sound Therapy says, thank you. Looking forward to the next one. And the next one will be this Wednesday at
Great.
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And again, that is going to be about the gut. We'll be sharing that link there for you in the chat again here just in a moment. And you can sign up for the reminders of that. But as Dr. Worden was saying, it's bringing it all together with the gut. And the last reminder we have for you guys today is where we are today didn't happen just from what we did today or yesterday. It's an accumulation of things. And Dr. Worden's going to help you tear down some of those barriers and help with the way that we all think, myself included. And I'll try to do my very best to be a good Sherpa to help with that as well. Kathy says, thank you for the series as well. We appreciate you all being here today with us live. And again, those of you on the replay, don't hesitate to leave us your questions as well. If we can't catch them right away, we will catch them eventually. And someone from YouTube is also saying thank you and looking forward to the next video as well.
Great.
All right, Dr. Worden.
And
Thank you
so
so
am I. I'm looking forward to seeing you all. And I'm ready to deep dive in the future on many topics. I just can't wait. And we're building our community. I'm glad that you're part of it. Stay with me. It's only going to get better.
Yes, and thank you, Barry. He says, remember to share it. Yes, share this information out,
Yes.
and just even share it right now. Share this live with somebody right now, whether it's on your page or somebody directly. If you can think of someone who has an autoimmune condition that may need to hear some of this information, I know that's what I'll be doing when I end it today. And we thank you guys for being here. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.